going on? Welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. This is episode 94, and we are back after a small hiatus. We appreciate everyone for allowing us to take the summer break. I am your host, Johnny Soap, and alongside me, as always, he is Robert, the Phil Mickelson, Munich, off of a fresh golf trip. How are you, Robert?
Phil Mickelson when it comes to the actual golf, not everything that goes on off the golf course. So we'll throw that out there. But it's great to be back, John. I missed you. I think that was like the longest 2 weeks of my life not talking to you.
You're full of crap, but I'll take it. Thanks, Robert. I'm glad you got away and got some real refreshment on the golf course. You're telling me all about it off air. It sounded like a great trip, but I'm happy to have you back. Happy to be back on the podcast here because there is surprisingly a lot to talk about as we end August here, getting into September as we go towards training camp, Robert. And it's no better place to start here. And I guess we should start here because we missed last week's episode. The Flames family has lost a awesome person, a legend, a guy that a lot of us look up to, especially in broadcasting, and a guy who was the voice of the Flames for a long, long time in Calgary. Peter Maher has passed. He's had his funeral and his get-together, his celebration. We haven't had a chance here on this podcast, Robert, to kind of give our thoughts about Peter Maher, what he meant to us growing up, and our thoughts on his passing, because he truly is a legend. He's truly a guy that voiced most of our childhood, if not all of our childhood. I had this nice little small section of my life when I was younger where I had Ed Whalen on the TV side of games, and I had Peter Maher on the radio side of games, and I was living the high life and the good life with both of those gentlemen calling Flames games. So very much mourning the loss of Peter Maher, the legend that he is. He meant a lot to me growing up, being a broadcast aficionado like I am. I love Peter Maher, what he does, his approach, his preparation, his dedication to the craft of being a broadcaster. And then even more to that is just how nice of a human he was in the time that he took out of his day each and every day for everybody, anybody and everybody who stopped to talk to Peter Maher. They got his time willingly. And he was just an incredible person through and through, Robert. I don't know what your thoughts are on Peter Maher, but for me, this was the voice of the Flames. So will always be the voice of the Flames and the voice of my childhood.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was obviously terrible news to hear, and it was very sudden. I mean, I believe it was the night before he passed. He was on QR 770 on their sports show, just talking about how the Flames were back on radio and they were back on QR, and it sounded like he was doing well, and then at the snap of a finger, he's gone, unfortunately. So yeah, really, really tough news to hear. But I thought it was really cool seeing some of the reaction online. Every single person who talked about Peter Maher had nothing but good things to say about him. You talked about how friendly he was. That's the thing I kind of take away is just I never got to meet Peter or interact with him at all, but based off the people who had, it just sounded like he was just a very classy guy, very friendly guy, respectful. Like I said, not a bad word has ever been uttered about Peter Maher. And I think that says a lot about him and a lot about his character and a lot about the way he went about his business. And, just from a hockey fan perspective here, growing up in the city, we were very lucky to have Peter Maher as the voice of the Calgary Flames on radio. It was a privilege to have him in the city. There's not too many sports organizations out there that get someone like Peter Maher to be the voice of the team, but also be, a representative in the community and represent the team with the type of class that he did. And yeah, we're just very lucky to have him in the city. And yeah, I remember growing up, driving home from my own hockey games and my own hockey practices and listening to games on the radio. Those are always special moments. And in particular, the 2004 run where he was on a generational run of calls, and he became kind of a celebrity around the league. The one call I'll never forget is I think it was 9 years old during the run, and I was going to a lacrosse game, my own lacrosse game, at the Calgary Soccer Center. I think it was Game 5 of the second round against Detroit. I believe Craig Conroy scored the game-winning goal. I think it was a 1-0 win or a 2-1 win.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember listening to Peter Maher call that goal and me just freaking out. Like, I was just losing my mind, and Peter Maher was losing his mind. It was just like, it was so much fun. He just did such a good job, bringing that emotion and bringing all the energy from, the visiting arena through the airwaves. And yeah, it was moments like that I'll always remember, just being so happy listening to him call a Flames goal. And it is pretty devastating to lose him, but he lived a pretty incredible life. Sounds like he had a great family and great friends, and obviously had a remarkable career. So yeah, rest in peace to Peter. That was tough news for sure.
We lose a lot of celebrities and a lot of people, famous people that we know, and they suck, and you get those emotions like, we just lost someone really awesome. There's not many that bring a tear to your eye though, and for me, that's how much Peter meant to me growing up as well. Like, felt like you lost an uncle, someone that was very close to you by losing Peter Maher. Like, I would go out of my way to find his radio calls rather than listen to the TV broadcast and do my best to pair it up. It doesn't ever work that way, but you try your best. You listen to the calls because you love the calls. You go back and everyone plays the Sidney Crosby golden goal from the Chris Cuthbert call. You pair that up with the radio call of Peter Maher, and it's just absolute chills. And there's many calls to the 0-4 run. There's many calls in other runs, the Stanley Cup that the Flames were able to win. The iconic calls from Peter Maher, and he was always a professional doing so. He loved it, and I don't think there was anyone better on the radio to paint the picture that you need to paint when calling on the radio. Calling games on the radio is not an easy task. He made it look absolutely effortless, and we thank him for it. And he was a big part of our lives. And so absolutely, like what you said there, Robert, rest in peace to Peter Maher, a true legend of the Calgary Flames and the Calgary scene and the sports and broadcasting media. May he find the rest that he needs, and condolences to the Maher family for their loss and their time of grieving, and hopefully that they can find some peace knowing that Peter is at peace as well.
And just a quick shout out to Boomer, who put together that barn burner Peter Maher remembrance show where he brought on Rob Kerr, and him and Rob, they were fantastic together, just sharing stories and memories. And then, they brought on Pat and Rhett, and that was an incredible show. And it was mm-hmm. great that we were able, the fans were able to be part of that and get to celebrate his life and hear stories from the people who were closest to him. So yeah, that was just such a job well done by Boomer there.
How he did over 2 hours with absolutely no tears in his eye until the very, very end is just incredible, because that was a hard job to do, but one that was needed to do. And so very big thank you to Dean Mulberg for putting that on, and for the other guys, Rob, Pat, and Rhett, for joining that in. That was a really good conversation, really good chat, and I'm glad I was able to catch that when they were doing it as well. That's good shout out by you, Robert. There's no easy transition going from talking about a subject like that to what we're going to talk about on the show today, and so we're just going to jump into it, Robert. The Flames are coming into training camp in a couple of weeks here, and there's a lot of questions around this team, a lot of questions that we might not get answers to, questions that we're going to make up that we'll find answers to. And the big one that was going around on social media the last little while is the power play units, Robert. The Zane Parekh power play, the Simon Nemec on the power play. Simon Nemec did an interview and saying how he would like to be power play 1 and show Calgary that's where he's at. Where do you stand here on the Flames power play heading into the season? Who should get crack number 1 at running Flames power play 1?
Well, yeah, I mean, last night on Twitter, I put out a poll asking who people want to quarterback the top unit, and it stemmed from that NHL.com article where Nemec was pretty adamant that he wants to be the quarterback on power play 1. He wants to be the guy who that power play unit runs through. And, I think that's really interesting, because I think both he and Zane Parekh desperately want to be running those top power play units. I think that's kind of like the number one skill set of these two players, that they're both very talented. They're both offensively gifted players. And I think in order for them to be the very best versions of themselves, they need to be running a power play unit, particularly the first power play unit. And I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's going to be like a controversy, or I don't know if this is going to hurt the relationship between the two players or the players in the team if one of them's not running power play one. I think Ryan Huska is going to have to be really careful about how he manages this relationship with these two players, because I only think there's room for one of them to truly run the top power play unit. Sure, they could both be on the top power play unit, but only one of them is going to be at the top of the blue line, and is going to be kind of directing traffic. So that, I think that's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how that plays out. I know as of August 24th, I think Zane Parekh should be the quarterback on the top unit. It's why you drafted him. I take a look at his game, and I see a guy who, he's not quite as well-rounded as a guy like Nemec, and I think in order for Parekh to be truly an effective NHL player, he has to be the guy running the top power play unit, and his skill set in that regard is fantastic. Just the way he walks the blue line, the way he makes his passes, the way he gets shots through. This guy is an incredibly skilled, incredibly talented player, and I think that he's best suited for that role. Whereas with a guy like Nemec, I'm sure he could play that role too. I think he could probably do it really well. But at the same time, I see Nemec as more of an overall kind of like 200-foot defender who is going to get a ton of time at 5-on-5, who's going to get time on the penalty kill. And like he's going to get his chances, elsewhere outside of the power play, where I don't know if that's going to exactly be the case with Zane. So if we're talking strictly about a quarterback on the first power play unit, I'm leaning Parekh right now. But I mean, I don't think it's out of the question that Nemec could be that guy too. But I mean, I think I would start the season with Zane. How about you?
Firstly, you want to hear that from Nemec. You want to know that he wants responsibility. He wants to be part of it. He wants to run things. He wants to be in part of the solutions here in Calgary. So that was good to hear from that interview on Simon Nemec. For me, though, I'm quite similar to what you are. You drafted and developed a guy, and you have quote unquote an incumbent on your power play one unit, and that is Zane Parekh. So if you're talking strictly quarterbacking a number one power play unit, you kind of got to go with Zane to start. And it's nice to have the fallback option of a Simon Nemec behind him. There is a world where they both quarterback their own power play unit, and one's on power play 2, probably Simon Nemec. There's a world where they're both on the same power play. We'll get into that. But I think if you're talking quarterbacking your top unit, you've got to go with the guy that has the skill set, and that's Zane Parech's game. He is an offensive driver. He's a playmaker. He's a guy that has a deceptive shot that he needs to start learning to use a little bit more at the NHL level, and he's a guy that will help elevate the talent on that unit. The Flames don't have a lot of talent for power play 1. We'll get into that as well. So it needs to start at the top, and you need to have a guy who has the vision, the skill set, the skating, the stick that Zane Parekh does provide. And I think that if you allow him to run the unit and give him a legitimate opportunity to do so, I think you're going to start seeing some really good results from Zane Parekh and an elevation in his game, the confidence in his game. His confidence obviously is huge. We've already been through that in his short career. And so put him on power play 1 and allow him to run it and gain that confidence in doing so. And after 30 games, if it doesn't work, you have another guy there that you can try out and do the same thing with. Put him on power play 1 and let Simon Nemec take an opportunity to run with that unit. So there are a lot of options for the Flames here. But I think you have to start with the guy you've drafted and started to develop, and the guy that you've envisioned being your power play quarterback, and that is Zane Parekh. This conversation, Robert, leads us into then, if Zane Parekh is quarterbacking power play 1, what do you do with Simon Nemec? Where do you put Simon Nemec? How do these power play units shape up and fill out? And you've got a second unit you got to fill as well. If you have Zane Parekh quarterbacking power play 1, is it as simple for you putting him on power play 2, or do you find a way to put Simon Nemec on your top power play unit?
I'm putting him on power play 2. I want him to quarterback that unit. And the reason why, there's a couple things. Number one, I think Parekh is going to be the better power play player throughout his career. And I think the Flames need to groom him for that role for the next, 10 plus years, hopefully, with the Flames. I don't like the idea of Nemec playing on one of the wings or one of the half walls. I would rather see him continue to develop his own power play quarterbacking skills, and he can do that on the second unit. And then the other thing too is if Nemec and Parekh are on the same power play unit, who's going to be quarterbacking the second unit? Because as of right now, I don't have Hunter Brstevich as a regular in the Flames lineup to start this season. I think Zach Whitecloud is ahead of him on the depth chart. And if you have Nemec and Parekh on the same power play unit, are you going to have Whitecloud as the guy running the second unit? Is it going to be Ball? Is it going to be Kuznetsov? Is it going to be Middleton? I don't think there's a natural fit there for a power play quarterback. So I really like the idea of Parekh, PP1 quarterback, Nemec PP2 quarterback. Let them both work on those skills, and then you can make it a bit of a competition. I mean, if Parekh isn't getting the job done, you can always move Nemec there, or if Parekh is doing a really good job, then you keep him there. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with a little bit of healthy competition between the two players for that role. So that's kind of how I would go about it, just to start the season, and then you can always make changes from there.
I like that. And I align similar to what you're thinking there, Robert, but I'm going to take the other view of it just for the sake of the podcast and the conversation. The Flames lack a lot of talent. I've already mentioned that. They lack right shot talent for sure. They've got like two guys in the forward group that are right shots. A unit of Coronado, Frost, Gridden, Nemec, Zane for power play 1 kind of makes a little bit of sense if you have Zane quarterbacking it and you have Nemec playing kind of on sides of the left side board type of role, a rover type of role where you can still use his tools effectively. We all know about his shot and his vision and what he can do. I think there is a world where you can get both of those guys on the same power play unit and make it effective. It does bring up the question that you brought up, Robert, of who quarterbacks power play 2. So this scenario is easier if Hunter Brstevich is a full-time NHLer and he's on your roster because he's the easy answer to run power play 2. So there is a world where I think you can put both guys on the top power play unit and survive and get it through, and you use that unit for 95% of the power play. There isn't a lot of depth when you start looking at the forward group, which allows you to kind of move in this direction. I get the hesitation people have out there of putting 2 defensemen on your power play unit. It's not really it's the traditional way of doing things. It's going back to the 90s, it's old school thinking, putting two defensemen on your top power play unit. But in the instance of the Flames this year, and where the skill is on the back end for the Flames. And so use that skill to provide yourself with a top power play unit. If you go down this path and there isn't a Hunter Brstevich to run power play 2, I wonder what you can get out of a Zach Whitecloud running a power play unit as a number 2 power play quarterback. I wonder if that skill set is in there that he could take on that role. We saw a few defensemen over the last few years try to stumble their way through running the second power play unit. So what makes Whitecloud a little different than all those guys? I think there is something there. If the Flames go down this path, if you put the right guys around him, what is the health of Huberdeau? What is the health of Sharon Govich? What is the role of Connor Zary? There are guys that you can build a second unit around, especially if they're only going to get 30 seconds or less of each power play, because you've loaded up power play 1 with Zane and with Simon Nemec. There is a world out there where that does exist. Is it feasible? I don't know how long-term that is, but I think if you started that way, it would be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be. And, this upcoming season, this is the year for experimenting and trying things out. So, I mean, I'd have no issue with the Flames trying that. I'd be a little skeptical if whether having Nemec and Parekh on the same unit would actually work. I think both those players, they're both suited to be at the top of the power play unit. Mm-hmm. And, I think some of the forwards would be better options on the flank. So like I put together my first power play, I'll throw it by you and then kind of get your thoughts on it and let me know what you think. So I have Parekh as the quarterback on the blue line. I have Sharon Govich on the right side as a one-time option. And the reason I put him there is because, I think he's got the best one-timer on the team right now. And I think he's got one of the best shots on the team, probably behind Coronado and Gridden. but I like the idea of a one-timer option on the power play for the Flames. And also, it's a chance for Yegor to get going and a chance to build some confidence and a chance to start scoring some goals and maybe rebuilding his trade value a little bit, because I think he would be ideal next season if he wasn't on the team with just the influx of forwards that are going to be coming at the end of the year. So there's that. I have Gridden on the left side because I think his mix of playmaking and shot is perfect for that placement on the power play. Like, he's great at getting pucks below the goal line. He can get it to the point. He can make cross ice passes, and he can shoot. Like, I think that's a perfect spot for him. And then I kind of Frost down by the net where he can go below the goal line and make plays. And then I have Coronado in the slot, kind of in that Sean Monahan type of role where, you know, you'd set up that sort of tic-tac-toe kind of triangle passing play where you get the puck out into the slot to one of your best shooters. And I think Coronado, I think he's better suited as a guy to get quick wristers off from the slot rather than, you know, one-timers from the flank. So I'll kind of go over that again. So Perek at the top, Sharon Govich on the right, taking one-timers, Gridden on the left, the left hash mark, half wall, where he can make plays and shoot the puck. Coronado in the slot, and then Frost kind of at the goal line net front. I think actually that would be a solid power play unit for the Flames. I don't think it would be, you know, top 10 or anything like that, but I could see them, you know, producing around kind of 20th on the power play with a group like that. Do you have a first unit, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I do have first unit. I have to back up real quick. I forgot to give Curtis credit for his power play. That was Curtis's idea of the power play with the two Nemec and Perek on there. So thanks, Curtis, for that conversation on Twitter. To react to your power play unit, I like it. My one question, because mine's very similar to this. My one question is, what is Sharon Govich? What can you get out of Sharon Govich? Is he actually going to use that shot? Is he actually going to be engaged? Is he actually going to give you something? We haven't seen it until the end of the season for the last two seasons. Like, he needs to buy into it and buy into the fact that, hey, you're the shooter here. We need that shot at all times. Throw that puck on net. Get that puck to the net. If you can get that 30-goal version of Sharon Govich, then yeah, that's a great unit. That's a good unit. That should be a middle-of-the-pack type power play style unit. And because I'm unsure of what I'm getting out of Sharon Govich, I have Farabee in my power play unit instead. I have Gridden on that where you have Sharon Govich, and I have Farabee where you have Gridden for a lot of the same reasons that you mentioned there. I think Joel Farabee was the second best Flames forward last year after Gridden, especially after all of those trades made. I think that he showed a lot of poise and growth in his game, maturity in his game. I think that he's able to get to 20 goals. If you can harness that energy from a Joel Farabee, can he help elevate the unit? He can go down low as well, and he and Frost can switch. He can go into the middle and switch with Coronado if need be. He's a versatile player. So for me, I have a very similar unit to you. I just changed Gridden to the other side, and I have Farabee instead of Sharon Govich.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're Ryan Huska, I think you have to tell Yegor that the only way you're going to be on this power play unit is if you're shooting the puck. Because you're right. He didn't do that last year on the power play. There were so many times where he would kind of hesitate with the puck on his stick, whether it was a one-timer or a wrist shot. You know, he would second guess himself. He'd end up just moving it back down to the goal line, and just for some reason he just refused to shoot. And I didn't understand it. So I think him and, you know, Huska and Cale McLean, who runs the power play for the Flames, I think they'd have to sit Sharon Govich down and say, hey, if you're going to be on this top unit here, you got to rip pucks. Like that is your only job here, is to just rip one-timers, get that wrist shot off, and let's see if we can get your confidence going here. And if he doesn't do that, then maybe you throw a guy like Farabee or Huberdeau or whoever else you want on that unit there. So yeah, that's kind of my thinking. And I mean, I agree with you on Farabee in terms of him being one of the better forwards on the team last year. In terms of like a spot on the power play, I feel like he'd be really good kind of around the net front, or maybe even the slot. Just because I don't know if playmaking is necessarily his thing, and I think you need to be a playmaker if you want to play kind of on that half wall role. So, but once again, I mean, there's not really any wrong answers here. This is the year for the Flames to kind of try things out and see who works in different positions. And, you know, I'd definitely be open to seeing Farabee in that type of role.
It makes for an interesting conversation on power play 1 because there are a few bodies there, but you quickly run out of skill trying to get a power play 2 together. And so that's where the conversation for me really is quite interesting because you could put a few, we mentioned a few guys here for power play 1. You got a great quarterback on there. You got a great shot in Coronado. We know Gridden's going to do a lot of good work, and you got to try to fill that out. But then you got to try to fill power play 2 out. And of course, if we have Parekh on power play 1, you're going to have Nemec on power play 2. Did you go as far, Robert, as preparing a power play 2 unit? Because I've got one if you don't.
Yeah, I got one. Let's hear yours first.
All right, cool. A lot of this hinges for me on the health of Jonathan Huberdeau. You're going to see if he's healthy. He's going to be in the lineup. He's going to be on power play somewhere. So I have Jonathan Huberdeau on this power play on the left side there to be the playmaker. Please pass the puck like he used to. Give us some sort. If he's not there, it becomes a little bit different. I have 47. I have Connor Zary in my net front presence role. The guy has the ability to be there. That's a role I'm going to define for this guy because I want to build up Connor Zary for one of two reasons. One, I'm either going to trade this guy, so I need his value to go up, or two, he needs to find and be a solution for the Calgary Flames. And I think this role for him really, really helped bring that out of him. I have Sharon Govich on the right side of my second unit because I don't have him in my first unit. And then because we lack the center depth in this lineup, Michael Backlund kind of defaults onto my power play unit here. I think he can provide what he will provide as a good two-way forward. It's not flashy, it's not great, and it speaks to the lack of depth and skill the Flames do have, in my opinion. And so I think he's there. And then I went as far as to put an alternate on here. If Huberdeau can't go, I wonder what Sam Honzik can be on the power play for the Flames. So if there is no Huberdeau because of health reasons, I do have Sam Honzik being in that role for me.
Yeah, mine's very similar to yours. Definitely Huberdeau on the left. Yeah, health permitting, and the way Craig Conroy made it sound when he first had the surgery, it sounded like Huberdeau was going to be ready for the start of the season, and we'll see if that happens or not. I'm not so sure that he'll be ready, but we'll find out. Nemec as the quarterback. I had Zary on the right side, okay, just because of his passing ability. I think he's one of the better playmakers on this team, so I wanted him on that half wall just to pass the puck and make plays. And then same with you. I mean, it just came down to, essentially running out of bodies. So yeah, I got Michael Backlund at the net front, and he's got a good set of hands. Like he's had a bunch of tip goals before in the past, and he's a bigger body, so I don't hate the idea of him being a net front guy. And then I had Joel Farabee in the slot. Mm-hmm. I think if teammates can find him alone in the slot, he can kind of get off a quick wrist shot or a quick snapshot. I think there could be some success there. So the Honzik one is interesting. He proved in junior that he's got talent. He's proved in stuff like rookie tournaments in the preseason that he's got skill. And so I would be definitely open to seeing what he could do on the power play at some point. The other guy I was kind of thinking about, be curious to get your thoughts, is and we've seen it a couple times in the past, is what about the idea of Adam Klapka as a net front guy? Just parking that 6'9" gigantic frame in front of goalies and trying to cause havoc.
We've seen them try it. The thing is, you have to get Klapka to commit to it as well, right? I'm. Please don't give me hate for this. I am not an Adam Klapka guy. I am not. I see what people see in the guy, but it's so inconsistent that I don't love what he brings to the table every night. Some nights he's just really, really good, and then he's gone for 2 or 3 weeks. You just don't notice him. If you can get that big frame in front of the net and committed to that role and be Mr. Holmstrom like we saw back in the 90s with the Detroit Red Wings, I'm all for it. You got to get him to commit to it. I don't hate it, but I got to see the commitment, and you've got to see the consistency out of Klapka, because if he can use it properly, that's a pretty big net front presence, but he's got to commit to it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, I find when Klapka is on his game, I find him incredibly effective.
Yeah.
How many guys in the league can skate like him at that size and have hands like him? I mean, he's a total unicorn. But like you said, it's probably more like 1 out of every 8 games or 1 out of every 10 games when he really shows up and really makes a difference on the game. And then the rest of them, it's just like, yeah, he's kind of there, and he'll throw a couple hits and he'll get in on the forecheck, which is great. But I mean, outside of that, he doesn't do a whole heck of a lot, and he takes a lot of silly penalties too. So I mean, if they could somehow just get him to be more consistent, I really believe that he can be a good player. But the NHL, it's the hardest league in the world, and you hear former players talk about the hardest thing to do is to be consistent day in, day out, and Klapka's got to figure that out. And if he can, I don't see why he couldn't be on that second power play unit as a net front guy, because he does have the hands. He's one of the biggest players in the league. You can't see around him. It's like an eclipse for the goalie. So yeah, I mean, and once again, why not just try it for 10, 15 games and just see what the heck happens? So it's another interesting wrinkle to the power play units.
Yeah, and I like it. I like having those wrinkles. You like having the options there. For me, I did some lines the other day as I was preparing for another show and doing other things here, and I had a hard time deciphering between Postel, Klapka, and Siplikov. Who's in the lineup? Who's out of the lineup? Who's on my fourth line? Should I move somebody up? And frankly, I got Klapka and Siplikov in like this rotation on my fourth line because just I need to see the consistency out of the big man. Like, number 43 has got to be a mainstay every single game if he wants to be regular in the lineup, in my opinion. And if you can find a role like being on power play unit 2 and being in front of the net and finding a role there, that will go a long way to solidifying what he is for the Calgary Flames. And be Thomas Holmstrom. Go ahead. If you can find a similar type of role to that, what a find the Flames would have there and using that body. So that it's a good wrinkle to have there, Robert. I love it.
It's a bit of a make or break a year for him. Hey, like I really think that he's got to prove it that he can be consistent, that he can be that player. And then if he's not that guy, I think it's going to be super easy just to move on from him. This just don't re-sign him, or maybe you trade him at the deadline because, like we've mentioned in the past, the Flames have a lot of forwards coming up in the prospect system here. And if he's just there being super inconsistent, like he's taking up a spot from a guy like Othman or a guy like Suniev or Stromgren or Cairns, like, I would rather see those guys get a chance than watching an inconsistent Adam Klapka.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I put him and Postel kind of in the same category here. It's like, what are you? Like, this is the season to show us what you are, what you have. You're not going to get more opportunities after this season because of all the guys you just listed off, Robert, plus other guys coming up the pipeline. Jack Hexall is coming. Sucks Taylor might be coming. Suniev might be coming. You got Harrington coming in the pipeline. Like, there's a body after body after body are behind these guys. And if you're not it, especially if you're Klapka, being a free agent, you just might not get qualified and you may get moved on from because they have a younger player who comes in and gives you the same or a little bit more. Like, what is Othman at the NHL level? They're going to find out, and you don't want it to be at your expense. You want it to be at someone else's expense. So big season for Adam Klapka. I think this is the appropriate time to have, as we switch into another topic, but also keeping the power play in mind, of having the Huberdeau conversation here, of having what we expect from Huberdeau. Are we positive about his recovery as we move on here? How confident are we that he can be an effective player on a power play unit? We did a little inside baseball here for another show. Part of Locked On Flames. They did their top 100 players. They're voting on it right now. And they asked me for some names for the Flames side of things. And I didn't put Huberdeau on the list. And the director comes back to me. He's like, "Are you sure you want to leave Huberdeau off the list?" And that really got my brain thinking, Robert. Do we leave Huberdeau off the top of the Flames list for the best players the Flames have here as we talk about these power play units? Is Huberdeau still a valid top-end player for us in Calgary here? Should we leave him off our power play units? And what should we expect from number 10 going into the new season?
Oh, boy. I mean, those are all good questions that I don't know if Flames fans have the answer to right now, because we just don't know what he's going to be like coming off of this hip resurfacing surgery. I mean, we've seen a whole bunch of examples of guys who have come back and have never been the same, whether it's Nick Backstrom or Ed Jovanovski. I mean, even watching Patrick Kane, he's not moving the same as he once did. Yes, he's still putting up the points because he's Patrick Kane and he's got an incredible set of hands and vision and all that kind of stuff. Huberdeau's not at that level, especially, after watching him the last 4 years here in Calgary. So, yeah, I mean, I have no idea what to expect. If I'm going to give an opinion or kind of like a gut instinct, I have a feeling that he's going to be a middle six player for the next 2 to 3 years here, puts up anywhere between 35 to 50 points and is probably part of a second power play unit. That's kind of how I see things going. But, the thing that Huberdeau's got to be a little bit worried about is, the Flames have a lot of talented young forwards coming up in the system, whether it's Cole Reschny or Ethan Wittenbach or Cullen Potter, whoever they're going to take in the first round in the 2027 draft. There's going to be a lot of guys coming for those types of roles, and he might be on the outside looking in within the next, 2 to 3 years here. So I'm worried about it. I'm genuinely worried about it. Later on in the episode, we're going to kind of talk about, things that we're excited about and things that we're a little worried about. Huberdeau made the list of the things I'm worried about just because the contract, the injury, he was awful last year. And like, I know he was playing through that hip injury, but he was on pace to put up half a point per game. And he was still playing in prominent positions on the power play and at 5-on-5, and is still only playing at a 41-point pace. So I'm definitely worried about him. I really hope for his sake that he can turn things around, and hopefully coming off this surgery, he's not going to be playing in pain, and hopefully he can skate a little bit faster and he can move a little bit better, because I really want him to succeed. He seems like a great guy, and it would only help the Flames moving forward if he turned into a good player. But I certainly have a lot of question marks about him for sure.
Well, let's get into it. Let's get into the quote unquote negative stuff first, Robert. Let's flip those two topics around here. We'll get into the positive stuff in a little bit here, but let's talk about the worrisome stuff here, because Huberdeau is at the top of my list as well. He is a polarizing player, and people are going to continually look at that contract versus what we're getting out of him on that contract. For me, I gotta put this contract out of the brain. It is what it is. We're never going to get rid of that contract. It is what it is. For me, it's the worrisome part is he's saying all the right things, and they're saying that the recovery is going well. And we've seen the history of this type of surgery in the National Hockey League. You mentioned Kane. Klingberg's gone through it. Nicholas Backstrom had his career pretty much ended in the National Hockey League because of a similar surgery. For me, the worrisome thing is, what if Huberdeau comes back and he's worse, or he can't play? Well, now you have a player on that contract, but that is not playable. Is that a benefit to the Flames? Is that a negative for the Flames? Like, now you have this guy around the locker room who can't provide you. What if he's good enough to play, but he's not providing you points? Well, does he become an expensive fourth-line player, third-line player that you're not getting anything out of? So for me, that's the big worry. What if, and I don't want to take this view, but it's got to be on the table. What if the second worst scenario happens for Jonathan Huberdeau, where he's still good enough to come back and play, but he's not an effective player anymore? He's not bad enough that he has to retire, but he's bad enough that he's not providing you anything. That, for me, is a worst-case scenario for Jonathan Huberdeau and the Flames, and it's got to be a worrisome thing because he's already was a player not providing you with a whole ton, apart from that one season where everyone was raving about how he reinvented his game. He was still giving you very little, but it was better. It's worried that it's going to be less than that from Jonathan Huberdeau. So that has to be the number one worry for the Flames.
Yeah, I think so. I actually think the worst case scenario is probably what you just described. It's that he does come back, but he's now a 25, 30-point player making $10.5 million. Like, from a team perspective, I actually think that's probably the worst outcome, because then it's like, okay, well, we're kind of stuck with him. We don't really know where to play him in the lineup. We have all these young guys coming up. He's kind of taking up a spot. We can't trade him. Like that's when you're really in trouble. So for the Flames' sake, for Huberdeau's sake, I hope and pray that he comes back healthy. I hope he comes back feeling like the best version of himself and will be that guy that we saw in the 24-25 season when he scored, I think it was 29 goals and a little over 60 points and played a better two-way game and was penalty killing and all that kind of stuff. I hope we see that version of the player, because any other version outside of that, I think the Flames are in a bit of trouble here. And hopefully it works out well. I'm a little concerned. I think the Flames publicly are trying to be very positive when it comes to the story, but I'm worried about the surgery, and I'm worried about what we've seen from him over the first 4 years.
Yeah, you can't help but be right. When you talk Jonathan Huberdeau, that's almost immediately where my mind goes, right? Is the lack of what we've gotten out of Jonathan Huberdeau. And that sucks because I'm a huge Huberdeau fan, and what he brought when he was in Florida for sure. So it kind of leads me into my second one, Robert, of negatives. Jonathan Huberdeau didn't provide a ton of offense, but with him out of the lineup, there's even less offense. For me, the worrisome thing for the Flames is who's going to score on this roster. You got to have more than the Grid and Frost Coronado combination and a couple of goals from the back end from Nemec or Perek. Who's scoring goals? Who's getting you that depth scoring? Are you relying on Farabee and Sharon Govich to get goals? You need to find these goals. The inconsistency of Klapka and Pospisil, can you find goal? So for me, overall, Robert, I'm actually very worried at how these Flames are going to score goals. We're going to have to see a lot of Daryl Sutter 2-1 hockey again. It's not always exciting, and that's how the Flames are going to have to win. But can they even get the 1 or 2 goals to win those type of hockey games? So for me, Robert, my second biggest worry is where's the offense coming from?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be done by committee. I think, there's going to have to be probably 9 or 10 guys that all have solid seasons if the Flames don't want to be in the basement of the standings, which is where I kind of hope they end up. But, the organization doesn't feel that same way. So I think it's going to have to be, a lot of internal growth from a guy like Matt Coronado. He's going to have to go from 18 goals to, pushing 30. You're expecting similar results from a guy like Morgan Frost. Joel Farabee, similar results. You need more from Yegor Sharangovich. You need more from Connor Zary. You're going to have a full year of Matvei Gridin. You're going to have a full year of Zane Perek. You're going to have a full year of Simon Nemec. So, all those things are going to happen if the Flames, want to be competitive and put on a half-decent product for the fans this year. So, yeah, where the goal is going to come from, it's going to have to be those guys, but there's not going to be one player maybe outside of Matvei Gridin who's going to step up and be like a true difference maker on this team. It's going to have to be done by committee for sure.
It's scary because they traded Nazem Kadri, and the Flames, Matt Coronado led the Flames in scoring last year with only 4 more points than Kadri, and he played 20 more games than Nazem Kadri. So your leading scorer at 45 points, and it's a scary notion to think. You got to have a lot of guys get close to career highs. You've got to have Frost hit that career high in 20 goals again. You got to have Farabee get to 20 goals again. You got to have Sharon Govich get back to being a 25 to 30 goal scorer. You've got to find Connor Zary's got to find double digits close to 15, 20 goals. You've got to have a lot of committee, and it's a lot of guys trying to get to those numbers. But you're asking a lot of guys to have career years. Can Zane Perek get to double-digit goals? What does Simon Nemec provide you from the back end? You have a lot of hope that you're getting offense from the back end, but those are young players trying to find their way in the National Hockey League. Middleton's not going to give you a ton. Ball's not going to give you a ton from the back end. Pospisil, Klapka, those guys aren't going to go. You're hoping that Gridin finds his scoring touch like we saw. There's a lot of hope and what if and hopefulness to this Flames offense. I just don't know if they're going to get enough goals here, and I'm happy to be wrong. But you look at career highs versus what the Flames are getting out of these guys, you're asking for a lot of close to career, if not career years, from a lot of forwards.
Well, and the other thing to add to this whole conversation is, yeah, like the actual roster itself, there's not like a lot of talent there, but I think what can make a huge difference from an offensive perspective next year is how Ryan Huska approaches systems.
Good point.
This season. So, that's on my worry list, and it's how Ryan Huska is going to approach this season. And, this could apply on the worry list, or this could also apply in the things that we're excited about, because if he coaches the team like he did from March through April next year, where, during that time, the Flames were 19th in the NHL in goals scored, I think that it could actually be a pretty fun year for the fans to watch this team. Obviously, the results, they're not going to be great. Like, this team's guaranteed to finish in, I'll be generous and say the bottom 5. But will Ryan Huska open things up and allow his players to take more chances offensively? And instead of losing games 2-1 or 3-2, maybe they're losing games 4-3 or 5-4, and players are gaining confidence offensively. They're putting up some numbers. They're having some fun, despite losing. So that's another thing that I think, yeah. I don't know if I'm worried about it, but if Huska coaches like he did from like October to February, I think Flames fans are in for a long, long year. I think it's going to be incredibly boring hockey, and I worry a little bit about just the overall spirit of the team if they're playing this like incredibly defensive game where they're blocking a million shots and they're working their ass off, but they're getting literally no results for it. I think that that's the type of thing that can really start to kind of split a team apart. So I think Huska's going to have to be really careful about how he goes about his business here. And I really hope that he has this environment where players are allowed to take chances. They're allowed to have some fun. They're allowed to create some offense, because in a year like this, where there's going to be a lot of losing, like it could be miserable if that's not the case.
Yeah, it might not be a full-on worry, but it absolutely is concerning for me as well. I like that we've talked about Huska a couple of times on a few episodes we just did here. And the message for me is pretty simple from him. It's you've got to realize what you have in the roster and what this team is trying to accomplish. We're not trying to win the Stanley Cup today. It's just not going to happen based on the roster you have. You're trying to incorporate a culture with these young players can come in here and play and be effective NHLers, growth, get to the next level, development of these players. And so he's got to realize that, and he's smart enough that he should be able to realize that and build a style of play and what his expectations are around that. He's got to realize that this isn't about getting Michael Backlund to the next level. This is about, can Matt Vaygridden be a top 6 effective player? Can he be the guy that you can lean on for years to come? Can we get Matt Coronado back to 25 goals? Can we get him maybe closer to 30 goals? What do we have on the back end? Those are the things that Ryan Huska needs to focus on this year, because I'm with you, Robert. If he goes back to playing we've got to win this hockey game on a Tuesday in Ottawa in January, I don't know if that's going to get the best out of this roster, and it can quickly become something that's not what the Flames actually are. And honesty will go a long way for me, for Ryan Huska this year. Realize what you are. I understand NHL head coaches want to win, and they're going to try to coach to win. That's fine, because you want that atmosphere for your young players. You want them to be in a culture where losing isn't acceptable. It's just this roster isn't good enough to win a lot of nights. I have them in the bottom third of the league. I put a big tweet thread out on Monday morning about, somebody asked about can the Flames get better than 77 points, which is what they ended up last year. And I went through a bunch of things on that list of reasons why I think 77 is a lofty goal for this franchise. And one of those things is, what can Huska get out of this roster? And it's definitely a concern roster. Good one there from you, Robert.
Hammer the under on that. Hammer it.
I went through a bunch of things. I talked about how the Flames are going to rely on their goaltenders, and can their goalies provide what they provided last year? Good goaltending in bad environment. What do you have with all of these players? We talked about, what is Sharon Govich? What is Farabee? What is Klapke? What is Pottsville? There's a ton of questions around those kind of things. Like, what are you going to get out of these young players? What do you get out of your power play units? Like, there's a whole bunch of questions for the Flames going into this season, and it all comes down to really how Ryan Huska coaches behind the bench. So 77 points, it feels harsh, but I bet the under.
Oh, yeah, big time. I'll throw a couple other, just like sort of like kind of what we're worried about heading into next year.
Yep.
One is making sure that the dressing room doesn't turn toxic, because I think they're going to struggle. I truly believe on paper that this Flames team is probably the worst in the NHL. I actually think on paper the Canucks are better than the Flames, and like Manny Malhotra, coming into coach instead of Adam Foote, I think is almost guaranteed to provide an extra 10 to 12 points for the Canucks. And if Thatcher Demko's healthy and all this kind of stuff, I actually think they're a better roster than the Flames right now. So there's going to be a lot of losing. There's going to be a lot of tough nights for those guys in the dressing room. And I think it's on Ryan Huska and the coaching staff, and then as well as the leadership core. I mean, guys like Michael Backlund, Huberdeau, Strome, Frost, Farabee, Whitecloud, Middleton, those guys, they need to make sure that the Saddle Dome is a fun environment for people to come to work, that it's a place where, guys are coming to get better, but also trying to create like that positive environment, because just like losing sucks. And I think there's gonna be a lot of losing this season, which isn't a bad thing, because the Flames desperately need that top pick in the draft. But yeah, I think it's on that leadership group to make sure that things don't turn toxic, because it can. And if Ryan Huska's coaching a certain style where he's asking the players to sacrifice their bodies, and he's asking the players to be incredibly defensive and not take chances offensively, I think particularly the young guys are going to start to turn a little bit. I mean, we saw with Connor Zary last year in his comments in his end of the year press conference, where he basically called out Ryan Huska and said, like young guys need to be able to go out and take chances and make mistakes and not be punished for it. And, if Huska has that hard nose, sort of demanding style of coaching on a team that's just losing a ton of games, like things could turn sideways. So I really think it's important that Huska and the leadership group make sure that this year is just not an absolute miserable environment to be a part of.
The Canucks finished with 58 points last year. So Flames had 77, Canucks had 58. Where do you see the Flames fitting in all that? Because I agree with you on your whole point there about the culture there. Like if you're a Flames team that's finishing in that mid 60s to lower 60s in points, it's going to be a lot of tough nights. And so you've got to have a mentally strong room with the leadership group that they don't accept the losing, but your process has to be correct. You got to have the right approach. You got to have the right mindset. You got to have the right frame of mind. You got to have one another's backs in that locker room. Because if you're looking anywhere between that 58 points the Canucks got last year and the Flames got at 77 last year, you're looking at a 50 loss season. You're looking at a lot of losing, dropping points when you should be dropping them. Like that's a tough pill to swallow. So I think that's a good point by you, Robert. You've got to have a good culture, an overused word I know in sports, but it's the right word. You got to have the right room. You got to have the mentally strong room. And it starts with Huska and that leadership group. That's a really good point by you. 58 points over 82 games. That's a harsh feat. That's tough to do.
Yeah, and I don't think the Flames are going to be that low. I see them kind of low 70s, high 60s this season. I think last year, literally everything that could have gone wrong from the Canucks went wrong, and they had quite literally the worst head coach in the NHL in probably the last 15 years. I think Adam Foote was a horrendous head coach. So I think between them getting healthy and then having a full season of Marco Rossi on the team, who was producing at a 65-point pace for them in the last couple months of the year. And I think Elias Pettersson, is a better center than anybody on the Flames right now. They have Besser who can score 30. They have DeBrusk who can score 30. Hronik's a better defenseman than anyone on the Flames. And so I think the Canucks won't be at the 58-point range. I think they'll be right there with the Flames in that kind of low 70s. But I do think on paper, this team is not very good. And the goaltending will probably do a good job keeping their heads above water for most of the year. But I mean, even you just heard at the end of last season, Kevin Woodley was saying that the environment that those goalies were playing in was the worst in the NHL. It was worse than the Canucks. And, there's no Kadri this year. There's no Coleman. There's no Anderson. There's no Weegar. Those are big pieces of that team last year that still finished fourth last in the NHL. So, yeah, and I'm not saying all this to be negative or anything. I'm just telling it like I see it. And I actually think this is a good thing because they desperately need that top 3 pick. They need to add elite talent. And I think this is the year to really bottom out and do that. So I think Flames fans should actually be excited about that in the long-term outlook of this team.
Yeah, it's not being negative. It's being realistic of what this team is, where they need to go, and what we need from them to get there. And this is it's really neat. This is the part of the rebuild people don't like. This is the part of the rebuild that people like to poo-poo on. It's the tough couple seasons that you have to be down here, and it's unfortunate that you got to do it this way, but it's got to be done so you can get those elite talent. You can be a better team at the end of the day. It's not about preaching about losing. It's not about preaching about being negative. It's all about, hey, this is how you realistically build your team. They've got a lot of good pieces. We saw a lot of good from Gridden and Coronado. We've seen great from Perek, and we got, Bristevich coming. We have hopeful that Nemec can add to it. You're hopeful that Zary can find a role and Hanzik can be healthy. And then you have that long list of prospects, the Karls, Reshnies, Wittenbach, Hextalls, Potters, Muse, et cetera, that you're hopeful can be more pieces. And now you need to add to that as well. So this is a big season for the Flames. And it's not about being negative. It's about being realistic what the team is, what they need moving forward as well for this franchise. I have one more concern one. It's kind of a smaller concern for me, but it is worrisome in the fact of this player's meant so much for the Flames and has done so much for the Flames, and he no longer has his running mate. The Flames are now without Blake Coleman, who was with Michael Backlund for the last few seasons, and I think has helped elevate Michael Backlund's game to the level we've seen Backlund play at. Father Time is undefeated, and Michael Backlund is getting into those later 30 years. What can Michael Backlund provide for the Flames this year on ice? And can you find a running mate? People are going to say Farabee or Hanzik and a couple other guys, which is great. Can you replace what you had with Blake Coleman and with Michael Backlund in terms of what you got on the ice, yes, but also what you got off the ice with the leadership those two guys had for this Flames team. You go back and you watch Flames the last couple of seasons, and it's Backlund Coleman every PK. It's Backlund Coleman on power play 2. It's Backlund Coleman when you are up a goal. It's Backlund and Coleman when you were down a goal. That's a big hole to fill with Coleman being gone and with an aging Michael Backlund. How do the Flames approach that hole in their roster? So not a huge concern for me, but it's one that we've got to start kind of finding answers to, because it's a couple of seasons left of Backlund at most, and then that's it from him. You got to find how you're going to replace that role on the Flames.
Yeah, and Father Time catches up with everybody, right?
Absolutely.
And it's
except Tom Brady.
Except Tom Brady, who plays till he's 45 years old, wins Super Bowls, but he's the exception, not the rule. But like with Backlund, eventually, like, he will start to slow down. But like, in his defense, I haven't seen any reason to believe that it's going to happen right away, because he's kind of got the Mark Giordano sort of thing going, where it just seems like he continues to get better as he ages, which I find incredible, and it's a testament to Backlund and his work ethic and all that kind of stuff. So but like you said, it's going to happen at some point, and could it happen next year? It totally could. And not having Blake Coleman by his side might be part of that. So yeah, that's an interesting one. The last one for me is just quickly just the entertainment value of what we're going to see next year. And once again, this kind of comes down to Ryan Huska and how he goes about his business. But if they play that super defensive, hard-nosed, hard-checking, shot-blocking type of system with little to no offensive creativity or risk-taking, I think the fans could be in for a long year when it comes to the entertainment value. That's where I desperately hope Huska opens things up. And like you made a great point. Understand what you are as a team. Understand that this is not the year to be pushing to get the second wild card spot in the Western Conference. This is a rebuilding year. This is a year where you're going to finish pretty low in the standings. So if that's going to be the case, at least try to entertain the fans and give them something to cheer about a little bit this year, because yeah, it could be a long year. So that's my last one.
Yeah, short and sweet for me on that one is play the kids. Let the kids play and let them loose. Like, you obviously have your structure and play within your structure, but let the kids show why we're excited about them. Let Gridden play hard. Let Coronado feast on the power play. Let Zane Parekh wander how he likes to wander, and just give us the entertainment value. That's a good one from you, Robert. I really like that one. Let's kick around some positive ones, and I'm going to start off with one that's not a mainstream thought from a lot of people, just because I like to be a little bit different, as you know, on this podcast. I think the Flames are at a win-win situation when it comes to the status of Morgan Frost. I think with this player in tow, you're going to find out what you have in him, and it can go a couple of different ways. You can find out he actually is a good center for the top 6, and he's playable there, and he's a good soldier for you. And that you can sign him to a decent contract and have him in tow, or you can trade him based off his good play and get good value from him, or he plays awful and you're done at the end of the season no matter what happens. So I think the Flames are in a win-win situation when it comes to Morgan Frost, because he plays well and he's a top 6 center for you for a few years. Or you trade him for a good package, or he wasn't all that great, and you just kind of move on from the player with the sunk cost that was involved in things. So for me, my first kind of positive spin on things is I think with Morgan Frost, it's win-win for the Flames.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you could even throw a guy like Zach Whitecloud in that mix. You could throw Jake Middleton in that mix. You could throw Joel Farabee in that mix, Devin Cooley. I mean, there's a bunch of guys on this team where it's like, hey, if we keep you, that's great. If we don't and you get traded, then you get probably some pretty strong assets in return. That's also great with where the team sits right now. So I think that's a really good one. The first one I'll go with is just this young defense core. Like you take a look at this group, and like there's a lot of upside and there's a lot of youth there. Carson Karls, I know he's playing at North Dakota next year, but he'll probably sign at the end of the year. He's 18 years old, and he's not going to turn 19 until after this upcoming season. That's super exciting to have a guy who's that good at that age already. And then you got Zane Parekh at 20, Hunter Brestevich at 21, Nemec at 22, Kuznetsov 24, Ball 26. these are young guys that you can build this team around for the next 5 to 7 years. And when you start to come out of this rebuild and enter your contention window, all of a sudden your decor is all going to be entering their prime at the same time. And I think that's going to be really exciting. And, the two guys that I think I'm outside of Matvei Gridin, I think the two guys I'm most looking forward to watching this year are Zane Parekh and Simon Nemec, just because I think the upside is so high. I think they can generate offense. I think they can be electric players. And I'm absolutely pumped to see, what they can do, for Nemec in year 4 of his NHL career, and Zane Parekh in year 2. So yeah, that's what I'm really looking forward to watching.
Yeah, I love that. I love that one a lot. I'm going to expand that because it kind of ties into my next one as well, with just the young forwards as well. Like, it's exciting to have a team where you're looking forward to watching these young players rather than wondering what's left of Tony Amonte or what you can get out of Darren McCarty, or cool, we signed an old Todd Bertuzzi, those type of things. So it's nice that we're able to say, hey, maybe Zane Parekh is a 20-goal scorer from the back end. Maybe he is a 50-point defenseman from the back end leading a power play. Ooh, maybe Simon Nemec does provide us with double-digit goals. Maybe he is a guy that we can rely on as a 200-foot player. Ooh, excited to see what Gridin can do in a full season and opportunities that are going to be given to him. Maybe he can be the leading scorer of the Flames like he predicts he's going to be, which I don't think it would be hard this year. But hey, and so on and so forth. And then you look even a little bit further than that. Like you mentioned Carson Karls. Well, how excited are people over Wittenbach and what Cole Reshny is? Maybe Stuck Salius is a better prospect than we think he actually is. And it's exciting to have this list of prospects and this list of young players on the NHL roster to look forward to seeing not only this year, but at the end of the year and into next season as well. So it's a really good positive for me, Robert. So I'll just piggyback off that with the young forwards as well, because that's what I'm really excited watching. What is Matvei Gridin over an 84-game schedule? Like, what can he actually provide for this roster in those type of roles? Maybe Connor Zary can find a role and actually be the player we think he can be and fix the relationship with the team. That'd be a really big positive for this team as well. And it's exciting to watch these players and have these players, because like I mentioned, nothing is worse than going into a season and you've just re-signed again a 35-year-old Troy Brouwer, or however old he was when we signed him, or traded a 3rd-round pick so we can get that. You have to get some Brandon Bollig in your life, those type of trades. So it's nice to have these young players to look forward to rather than those aging veterans.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the other things that I think Flames fans can feel good about heading into next year is Matvei Gridin. And the more I think about it, and the more I kind of watch like highlights in his game, the more I think that Matvei Gridin has a special quality to him. Like we watched last year, like he brings everything to the table. He is a high-end passer. I think his passing ability is underrated around the league. He has a great shot already at 19 years old. You take a look at the body, by all accounts, he's kind of a beast already at 19 years old. Like, he's got like that really strong lower half, like like Marty St. Louis, Sidney Crosby type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even you watch him as a rookie in the NHL protect pucks and out muscle guys that have been in the league for 5 to 10 years, and just his work along the boards, and then there's also the off ice component where he's got this attitude where it's like, I'm a really good player, and I'm going to show you like just how good I am. And I think there's a little bit of an FU sort of cocky attitude that Gridin has, which I really like and I respect. And I think when you combine all those things together, I think the Flames have a special player on their hands here. Like, when he hits his prime, I could see Gridin being a consistent, 65 to 84 point guy, depending on the year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he can be that good. So I'm really, really excited to see what he can do for a full year in the NHL. And, he's just scratching the surface right now. And I can't wait to see what he's going to be like when he's, 23, 24 years old, entering the prime of his career. So I think Flames fans should be really excited about Gridin heading into this year.
We both said it on this podcast that he was the best Flame last year, especially after the trades. Like the second half of that season, he was the most dynamic forward that they had. He was the best player a lot of nights on that ice surface outside the goaltenders, and they relied on him to do a lot of things, and he took everything that was given to him and took it to the next level. And that's exactly what you want to see from a player when he was given opportunities. I love what we saw out of Gridden. I'm excited to see what 84 games he can do for this Flames team, being on power play one, probably being on your top line with Morgan Frost, top offensive line at least, and a guy who's going to get all this opportunity to be what the Flames project him to be. And I'm excited to see what he can be for the Flames over those games. I like your projection there. He could definitely be a guy who's 70 to 84 points and provide the offense. I think he can do for this Flames team what Flame fans were hoping Huberdeau would have brought when he was traded for. I think that's the kind of player that that Gridden can be. And I'm here for it. I'm here to see what he can provide for the Flames. So I mentioned Honzik because I wanted to tie Honzik into my positive things, because he for me, like Gridden, I think started turning a corner before he got injured last year. And so I think for me, a positive for me will be, what can they get out of Sam Honzik if he's healthy? What can he provide for this Flames team? And he can be that kind of guy. We talked about Blake Coleman. I think he can be that kind of guy that can fill part of that role for the Flames, play alongside Michael Backlund, provide a 200-foot game. And can he provide a bit of a penalty kill role? Maybe. We'll have to see if he can do it. But I think that for me, Sam Honzik has to be part of that conversation of young players we're excited to watch, and a guy that deserves a little bit of credit for the way they continue to battle through these injuries. And we got to pray now that we get a healthy year from Sam Honzik for me.
Totally. And if he does stay healthy and he realizes his potential, I genuinely believe that he can be a middle six forward, like a really strong middle six forward for a long time in the NHL. And it's going to be up to him to accept that role and realize that he's not going to be a 30 goal scorer and a 60-point guy in a true offensive dynamo. That's just not going to be his game at the NHL. But if he accepts his role as, let's call it a third line shutdown winger who forechecks like crazy and penalty kills and maybe gets a look on the second power play unit, like that kind of thing, I think he could be a really, really effective player for a long time. So I think it's a good one by you. The last one, I mean, this is just the obvious one. Just shout out the goaltending. You know, the thing I from a fan perspective that I really like about Dustin Wolf and Devin Cooley is just they are like really fun goalies to watch. Mm-hmm. You know, like I find there's a lot of goalies out there who are just super boring, that just completely rely on their size and they're almost blockers more than they are goalies. Like a guy that I think about off the top of my head would be a guy like Stuart Skinner. You know, like I don't find Connor Hellebuck to be the most entertaining goalie out there. You know, like those types of players, you know, Anthony Stolars. But when it comes to guys like Dustin Wolf and Devin Cooley, they're both just hyper athletic. You know, they're both, you know, crazy good athletes. Their side-to-side movement is incredible. They make highlight reel saves. They're both not afraid to play the puck. Like from an actual entertainment standpoint, I'm really excited to watch these two guys. And you know, I think Dustin Wolf is a legit number one goalie in this league. And then with Devin Cooley, I mean, I think he's a bit of a wild card. I'd be stunned if he pulled off a similar performance to what he did last year, because quite literally he was one of the best goalies in the entire NHL. And I mean, that's asking a lot of a guy who just, you know, became a full-time NHL goalie last year for the first time. So, but overall, I'm excited for the goaltending. I think it's a really strong part of this team. And I think they play an incredibly entertaining style as well. So I'm really excited about that.
They're going to be asked to do a lot for the Flames here too. And so they're going to get the opportunities to show what they're made of. And they're going to be the backbone of this Flames team. It's built from the back end out. So they're going to be needed for any success for the Flames this year. And I'm with you. Playing style-wise, is Devin Cooley the funnest goaltender to watch in the league? He's up there because he's a lot of fun. He's very animated in what he does, and it's a good style that he plays there. And Dustin Wolf's so athletic that he's never out of position. So it's a great entertaining style. So a couple of things there. It's fun to watch, and they're going to be relied on for the Flames a lot. And I think if you go around the league and you look at goaltending rooms, other teams have a better high-end guy, but I don't know how many teams have a better 1-2 punch than what the Flames have shown over the last season or so here. So good positive for the Flames here. That's a lot putting into this episode of this negative and positive for the Flames. There's a lot around this team, a lot of questions around this team. And one that was answered, Robert, was the fun side of things. The Flames have a home on the radio, and I'm very excited for it. CSEC and QR77 have announced that the Flames will be broadcasting their games on the radio station, the same place you find your Stampeder games. You're going to find your Flames games, and alongside that, they're also going to get a new show, host to be determined, but I think we all know who it is. Flames Now, which is a kind of a different name, but generic name, but cool. And then on top of that, they announced another show, Robert. Mike Richards is back for a show a week on the airwaves. So what do you make of the announcement? QR getting on board here, and the Flames have a new radio home. Exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I'm just happy for Flames fans, and got to give credit to Chorus Media and QR for stepping up and taking on these broadcast rights, because I know it's not cheap to produce these games and to pay all the people that you need to pay in order to put on that type of product. So they are investing in the Calgary Flames, and they're investing in local media coverage, and I give them all the credit in the world for that. So yeah, I'm excited about that. It sounds like they're going to have a pregame and a postgame show. Like you'd mentioned, they're going to have I think it's like a noon to 2:00 show called Flames Now, which is going to be great. We'll see who the host is there. So yeah, that's super exciting. And then, yeah, the Mike Richards one was interesting because, in his promos, he was kind of making it sound like he's almost going to start his own station. Like he was making it sound like it's going to be this really big deal. And we're bringing sports media back to Calgary, but it's once a week on a Saturday. So, I think it's just the start. And if it works, maybe they'll expand that a little bit, which would be great, because he's an entertaining guy. So yeah, no, it's good news. It was getting pretty ugly there on the media front here in Calgary, so it's nice to finally have some positive news when it comes to that industry in this city. And Flames fans deserve to have the best coverage possible, and I think having multiple outlets providing coverage, I always think is a good thing, and it's always good to have as many voices as possible in your market and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was really happy to see that.
I like the Mike Richards one because it's kind of a nostalgia show for those of us who are old enough to remember him on the radio with Peter Maher. So that's kind of a cool show. I like the time slot for my regular job. The noon to 2 works really well for my job. So that's a positive for me personally. And I'm just one of those guys that loves to put on a radio play-by-play. And so I was gutted when Fan 960 went away, because where am I going to listen to the Flames game? I love having that in my ear while I'm doing other things. And I don't always get to watch the games because I have too many kids and they like to take the TV away from me. So I enjoy the radio broadcast. So I'm glad that QR jumped on board here. Course Media. I know I saw some comments out there that were like, well, how can they afford this? They're a dying market. Well, this is going to help them as well as it helps the Flames out. I think this is a nice win-win for both the radio side of things and for the Flame side of things. And like you mentioned, Robert, it's finally a win in the sports media landscape in Calgary. They needed this win, and they got it. And so a lot of good kind of is going to come on the radio here. It's still going to be a news talk station broadcasting sports, but it's a good start. It's not going to replace what we had, but it's going to fill a couple of holes in what we did have with the Fan 960. I'm excited for it. I'm hoping the people that I have in mind that will be on those broadcasts are actually those people that are on those broadcasts, because there's a lot of good people that did a lot of good work on the old Flame broadcast that I hope get a chance to do the same thing at QR. And those announcements will come down sooner than later, and we'll get to know who's running those shows, broadcasting those shows, who's doing the Flames Now, conversations, and I'm excited for it. And it's a big, huge win, especially if you're a radio lover like I am. So I'm here for it, and I'm excited for it, and I'm going to be glued to every second I get of it as well. As so for me, that's a big win for the city of Calgary, for the team, and for the radio side of the world as well. Well, Robert, anything else we needed to bring up on the podcast here? Any other thoughts here? It's been a couple of weeks since we've had a podcast. It was nice to get the mic out again and get the lungs moving again. Anything else you wanted to bring on the podcast here?
No, that was a fun episode. It's great to be back on, chatting a little bit of Flames. And I'm just excited to get this season going. I mean, this is the last week of August here, so we're we're getting into that kind of like rookie tournament territory and preseason, all that kind of stuff coming up soon. So yeah, man, I'm just excited to get things going again.
We're just 2 weeks out from the Labor Day Classic at Stamps Games. We're a couple weeks out from training camp after that. It's go time around junior teams, and hockey is coming back. Very exciting stuff. We appreciate you for tuning in and making us a part of your podcast rotations. Don't forget, you can find Robert Munich on Twitter, Robert_Munich on X. I'm Vintage Johnny 84. And of course, the show is Red Mile Rundown wherever you get your social media. We are there as well. Hit us up and tell us where we failed, what you liked about the show, and help us get better each and every day. We appreciate you. For Robert Munich, I am Johnny Soap, and this is the Red Mile Rundown. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you next week.